Let Mother Earth be herself, by Jennifer Pratt Walt. Let Mother Earth just be herself, our everything, just as she could be, a radical sanctuary free of careless ravages. Let her seeds make landfall in soft caverns of soil. Let blissful earthworms swirl their way through a meadow as though they own it, which they do. Let our gathering be as self-aware as a forest. May sky's edges be ribboned in bird flight with rustling life in rivers and ponds below. May jeweled hummingbirds always find a flower. May salamanders feed their rich silence with the wetness in the moss. For Earth, protect her creatures who dig and tunnel, who gallop and bound, who slice and arch through seas, who walk ponderously in wrinkled skins, who build nests and dens in your pet's hair. May all creatures live their lives as if no human crushed asphalt over the land or shaved ancient forests bald. May my wishes for all I cherish about Mother Earth herself chant endlessly, all hours, anchoring among stars. May evening find me turning my hands up to gather blessings like rain. May this religion be. Let it be. I've been thinking a lot lately about the wonder of life, its simplicity that leads to such splendid diversity. I find that idea compelling, and it seems to occur quite a lot. For example, all atoms everywhere in the universe are made up of just 3 elementary particles. 2 found in the tiny nucleus, protons and neutrons, and the third dancing around, probably in orbits or orbitals. The 92 naturally occurring elements that result from these combinations make up everything we call matter. Elements that are in us today may well have been forged in the explosion of a very large star billions of years ago, providing proof of the Joni Mitchell assertion that we are stardust. Out of the 3 elementary particles and their dance together comes everything, everywhere, far as we know. And it fascinates me that it all happens here on this pale blue dot, where as Carl Sagan reminds us, that's here, that's home, that's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you've ever heard of, every human being who ever lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. That gives me chills. Of course, we're becoming a spacefaring species in spite of ourselves, as if exploring the final frontier will somehow cure us of our selfish ways. We're in a race to colonize the moon and Mars if we ever get a rocket that doesn't blow up right after it's launched. The theory goes that when you have an unlimited cosmos as your oyster, sins like greed and envy would disappear. There will be plenty of choices and lots of stuff and room for everyone, from the poorest of the poor to Elon Musk. So the need for greed or any of the other 6 deadly sins would disappear. Poof, they're gone. Fat chance. Nevertheless, I believe in space travel, and I think it's important for we of the human race to direct our go west young folk curiosity skyward. I sincerely hope we'll do it for the joy of learning, experiencing what it's like to be on another world. And most excitingly, to discover and experience life in another place in our galaxy. We have to limit our search to the Milky Way because our closest neighbor galaxy, Andromeda, is 2.5 million light years away. No worries, the Milky Way is a collection of 200 billion stars, most with at least one planet and frequently 2 or more. And the current estimate of habitable worlds is about 6 billion, providing plenty of places to explore and exploit. As long as we don't run into any aliens bent on doing the same thing. Of course, as I think about it, if we're on their planet, that would make us the aliens. It's quite likely that we'll find simple life, one-celled organisms, as long as we're open-minded enough to recognize them when we see them. After all, life started here between 3.5 and 4 billion years ago, pretty much as soon as it could, given that the Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. Earth was a violent place back then, but we have plenty of evidence that one-celled organisms lived near the hot vents coming from the volcanic activity of our rapidly forming planet. These vents spewed noxious compounds like hydrogen sulfide, a poisonous gas that's the essence of rotten eggs. And somehow life emerged and figured out how to use those compounds to derive energy, much like we use oxygen to do that today. We don't know how life began on Earth, but somehow in that chaotic world, the first DNA-based creature, the first of us, was born. From there, the double helix flourished, first for billions of years in one-celled creatures like bacteria and archaea, and then somehow, in the distant past, a big, bad archaea swallowed a much smaller bacterium, and somehow, instead of eating it, the archaea made it a partner to form the first eukaryotic cell, the bacteria providing abundant energy to the organism. We know that as mitochondria today. Eukaryotic cells helped ignite the Cambrian explosion a little over 500 million years ago, which gave rise to complex life, plants, animals, fungi, all appearing in a mere 90 million years. And what blueprint was used to create just about every plant, animal, or fungi that ever existed? DNA. It's an interesting structure, DNA, consisting in part of 4 so-called base pairs, adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. Each has a strong affinity toward only one of the others, and the feeling is mutual. So every time adenine forms an attachment, it is always with thymine and vice versa. Come on, wake up. There it is. Okay. Likewise, cytosine always attaches to guanine, and guanine always attaches to cytosine. The rules are simple enough. That's simple. Yet with very, very few exceptions, they dictate the makeup of every living thing that has ever existed. The nucleic acids are the rungs of the DNA ladder put together following the bonding rules I just pointed out. To make proteins, polymers of amino acids that are essential building blocks of life, sequences of 3 nucleic acids called codons code for one of 20 amino acids. The codon information is transferred from the DNA to the nucleus of a messenger RNA, which identifies the amino acid and then adds it to the growing protein. This is how proteins are built in everything. All bacteria, archaea, and eukaryotes, the plants, animals, and fungi, use DNA as their genetic blueprint. It includes nearly all cells that ever lived as far back as we know. Makes us all family, or at least distant cousins, which is how I prefer to think of my cockroach friends. The trail that DNA has blazed from the first bacterium to us provides undeniable evidence that we came to be who we are through evolution. Even in the early times, when one-cell critters began to become more specialized, able to sense food and move toward it, or to sense the presence of a neighbor and determine whether it was friendly or not. It's hard to imagine that a one-cell being is aware of itself as a separate entity, though pointing to and moving toward its food seems like a pretty smart thing to do. Cells mutated and clustered over billions of years, and evidence suggests that self-awareness, intelligence, and consciousness developed gradually, not instantly, or in only one branch of the evolutionary tree. I find the, quote, immortal soul, unquote, to be a particularly troubling idea when it is combined, as it often is, with the idea that only humans can have one. The immortal soul story goes on to say that God made us special, the most highly evolved species on the planet, put there specially by God to tend and exploit it. And therein lies the rub. Evolution isn't a ladder, it's a tree. Everything has been evolving together as the tree continues to grow, and every creature we share this planet with is just as evolved as we are. Of course, we humans have dominated the earth, expanding as we did over just about every inch of dry land, but domination is not a sign of intelligence, it's more of a brute force kind of thing. So to prove our superiority, we've come up with example after example of what we can do that no other species can. And example after example has been proved to be wrong. We said we were the only creature to use tools until we looked and found examples of tool use all over the animal kingdom. We said we alone can reason instead of acting, quote, out of instinct, a cop-out. We all act out of instinct in the sense that our subconscious initiates actions that we only become aware of a few hundredths of a second after they happen. And if reason is the ability to problem solve in unique situations, we see examples of that all over too. Indeed, as predation in the evolutionary past became a significant part of life, using reason to outsmart your predator became an important survival strategy. I have no idea where on the evolutionary tree self-awareness, intelligence, and consciousness began to show up, but I'm convinced they all appeared gradually and in parallel as needed to meet the demands of evolution, along many of the tree's branches, not just one. For example, there's evidence that an increase in brain size and power took place in parallel along at least one other branch of the evolutionary tree. That branch, with whom we shared a common ancestor between 600 and 800 million years ago, includes cephalopods, such as the octopuses and cuttlefish. You knew I was going to get there. In his book, Other Minds, The Octopus, the Sea, and the Deep Origins of Consciousness, writer and philosopher of science Peter Godfrey Smith recounts his time visiting octopuses and argues the octopus is the closest we will come to meeting an intelligent alien. There are stories of octopuses doing everything from escaping from enclosures impossibly small to squirting water at light bulbs to short them out. They clearly recognize the humans who work with them, even when the humans were dressed differently. In the documentary My Octopus Teacher, South African filmmaker Craig Forrester describes befriending an octopus in the kelp forest. Initially cautious, the octopus grew to trust him, allowing Forster to closely observe its behavior and form a unique bond, culminating with the octopus lying on Forster's chest for a short period of time. The behaviors the octopus displayed left little doubt that this creature was self-aware, intelligent, and, dare I say, conscious. Philosopher David Chalmers defines consciousness as the entirety of human experience, what we taste, hear, feel, and more, which gives our lives meaning and value. It seems to me that could easily apply to octopuses. And though relatively few studies have been done on cuttlefish, there's signs of intelligence there too. But the question of how that intelligence came about seems to linger on, with speculation that for cephalopods it happened accidentally, as a one-shot event before the octopuses and cuttlefish split 270 million years ago. After all, what use do octopuses have for big brains, experiencing only a simple life and only living 1 year? It would seem that only we came by intelligence honestly. But DNA sequencing results say not so fast. Protocardarins are a family of molecules that direct the development of our central nervous system. Putting together a central nervous system is complicated, and that's what those protocardarins do. They direct the construction of our central nervous system. The central nervous system of the octopus uses a diversified mix of the same chemicals. And we know now that cuttlefish diversify that same mixture themselves. So we're all building with the same building blocks, but they're slightly different among the different creatures, which strongly suggests that the development of nervous systems happened independently, not only between humans and cephalopods, but also between octopuses and cuttlefish. It would seem evolution has lots of paths to becoming intelligent. So what this leads me to believe is there is self-awareness, intelligence, and consciousness all around us, developing in parallel paths over all the evolutionary tree. We are one strain of that tapestry, one thread in common with all manner of life who weave their own threads. With DNA as our template, we're all in this together, and we would do well to pay attention to and learn from all of those other intelligences all around us as we muddle our way through this crazy, frightening world of ours. May it be so.